Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, welcome to our halaqa series, Diseases of the Heart. And inshallah, I want to start by sharing a personal experience to get this started. And I want to go back to 2013, which was a very eventful year for myself. Alhamdulillah, I had finished my studies. I had gotten my degree in economics, and I had the opportunity by the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go to Hajj, to go to Umrah, and that was a great experience for me. And I had also the privilege to finish memorization of the Quran, alhamdulillah, and that was a great blessing. So it was a very eventful year. And I also had some free time when I finished my studies while I was looking for work, and I had procrastinated this for a long time to do a big health checkup, you know, like the full health checkup. We don't do those. Usually we get so busy, you know, and sometimes it can cost some money, so we don't do that. So I went and I did like a full checkup, blood, everything, right? So, and I remember something came up. There was like a tumor, and the doctor told me it should be fine. It's nothing serious. Right? Tumors can be malignant or benign. They can be something normal, or they can be malignant, like they're cancerous. So he said, but we'll do a biopsy and we'll send it to the pathologist. And so he said, no worries, you know, I've done this for a long time. He was one of those like retired and just working doctors. I think he was a Chinese doctor. You know, I trusted Chinese doctors. So after I think it was a week or two, the results came back, and it wasn't as he had predicted. Actually, it turned out to be a malignant tumor. SubhanAllah. So I was referred to the Tom Baker Center, and many of you, if you have any relatives who have been diagnosed with cancer, the Tom Baker Center by Foothills, right? So I was referred to the doctor there, and I went to him, and he said, basically, you know, you're diagnosed with a cancer, right? And you know, SubhanAllah, there's some words that you know, kind of like stop time. You know, you hear them and you're like, you can't believe it. And you know, the cancer is one of those words. It's one of those words that really can kind of shock you, and it can change your life. It can change your perspective. And so it did. And I remember it was a difficult time for me myself personally. Alhamdulillah, by the fadl of Allah, I had caught it when it was in the early stages. So alhamdulillah, I got some treatment. But I learned a lot of lessons from that experience, and one of those lessons was that, you know, we're so busy with taking care of our body, you know, making sure that we have all these things that are very temporary, that will go away, you know, and we forget about the things that will last, the things that will stay, you know, our souls, you know, we forget about our hearts, we forget about all these things, we forget about the akhirah. We're so busy with, you know, accumulating wealth, you know, our school, our jobs, you know, all these things about life. We stay busy, but you know, when something happens to our body, we freak out, you know. And this body is temporary. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has lent us this body so we can worship Him and we can do good or bad. But we're so busy with this that we forget about, you know, the important part. We forget about our hearts, and so we don't pay attention to our hearts, and we don't care if it's sick. You know, our bodies might be healthy, we might be tough, muscular, we might look good, right? But our hearts might be sick, and our hearts might even be dead, and we don't even know it, right? Our hearts might be filled with, you know, different kinds of cancers, you know, first stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage, and we don't even know it, right? And some of the diseases like hatred, envy, you know, love of this world, fear of poverty, you know, fantasizing, wishful thinking, false hope, Displeasure with qadr. People are not pleased with Allah has given them, relying on other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking reputation. People just want reputation. Negative thoughts, fraud, anger, heedlessness, the ghafla, right? Rancor or ghil, that bitterness with people, against people, boasting, arrogance. The list goes on. Displeasure with, blaming people, always blaming other people, never taking responsibility. Obliviousness with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these diseases in the heart, right? And you will see that, any problem that you can think of, all the problems that you can think of, starting from our families, starting from ourselves, to our families, to our communities, to our cities, to our countries, it all goes down to the disease of the heart, as you will see. It comes down to people having sick hearts. They might be looking good outside, but inside they're rotten. They're sick, and they need help. And so, inshallah, in the next couple of weeks, we want to talk about that. We want to dive deep into this matter, the diseases of the heart. We're going to look at the heart. We're going to look at why the heart gets sick. And we're going to look at some of the diseases. We're going to pick a few of them and go deep into them. And we'll talk about the cures, bi'idhnillah. So, what's so special about the heart? Why is the heart so important? If I was to tell you, if you had 3 sons, for example, if you had 3 sons, okay, and one of them was a martyr, a shaheed, right? One of them was a scholar, a alim, and the third one was a philanthropist, someone who does a lot of sadaqah, a lot of good, okay? How would you feel? Right? I'm asking you guys, how would you feel? Would you be happy? You would be very happy, right? Why? Because these are, they're great, characteristics. These are great people. And you would think that these are like the best in the community, right? But if you go to the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say that the first people who will be judged on the Day of Judgment, the first people who will be judged on the Day of Judgment, the first one will be a martyr, a shaheed. And we know the status of a shaheed, right? From the highest of status. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ said that he will be brought to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will be brought in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this shaheed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to show him all the blessings He has given him. And the person will recognize them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask him, what did you do with those blessings? Right? And he will say, I fought for you until I died as a martyr. The person will say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I did that for your sake. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to him, kadabt, you have lied. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call him a liar. He'll say, you did it just so people can say he's courageous. That guy is tough. He's a hero. And it was said by people. People said that. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will order one of the angels to grab that person and drag him on his face and throw him into the hellfire. So that's the first person. The second person will be brought in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person who studied the deen and gained a lot of knowledge and who taught it and used to recite the Quran. Right? These are great things. And he will be brought in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just like the other person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show him the blessings that He had given him. And the person will recognize them. And then Allah will ask him, what did you do with them? What did you do with those blessings? And then that person will say, I studied and I taught it to people, right? And I recited the Quran for your sake. All of this I did it for your sake. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again will say, you have lied. You're a liar. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the heart. So he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell him, no, you did it just so people will say, he's a learned person. That guy has knowledge. He's a scholar. And just so people say you're a reciter. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command one of the angels to grab him by the face, drag him and throw him into the hellfire. And then the third person, a man who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a lot of money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with a lot of money. So he'll be brought in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show him the blessings again, and the person will recognize them, and then Allah will ask him, what did you do with the blessings? And he will say, oh Allah, I didn't leave one thing that you wanted to be invested in, like sadaqah, that I gave it. I gave a lot of sadaqah for your sake. Right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again will say, you have lied. You have lied. You did it just so people might say, he's a generous person. Kareem. Right? And people said it. People said you're Kareem. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will command the angel to throw him into the hellfire. And so from this hadith, this long hadith, it's a very shocking hadith if you think about it. Because you just told me that, these three people would be amazing people in our eyes. And the scary thing about this hadith is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is a hadith Qudsi, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that it was said to him. People actually said it. Like, people said, oh, you're a scholar. So people actually saw him as a great person, as a righteous or religious person, quote unquote, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not see that. And the person is deceived, right? Until his death comes and it's too late, right? And so we see from this hadith that what's the disease that is his heart? It's riya. And we'll talk about riya inshallah, which is one of the major diseases, that a person does something for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And sometimes, we do a lot of deeds and we're like, okay, I'm done, I'm good, I'm going to Jannah for sure, right? But who knows if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted it? And who knows if we actually did it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And so we see here the importance, right? The importance of the ikhlas, which is in the heart, right? And we see the importance of making sure we don't have that disease. I'll give you another hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لَأَعْلَمَنَّ أَقْوَامًا لَأَعْلَمَنَّ أَقْوَامًا مِنْ أُمَّتِي يَأْتُونَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ بِحَسَنَاتٍ أَمْثَالِ جِبَالِ تِهَامَةِ بَيْضَاء فَيَجْعَلُهَا اللَّهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا فَيَجْعَلُهَا اللَّهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, I certainly know of people from my ummah. لَأَعْلَمَنَّ أَقْوَامًا مِنْ أُمَّتِي يَأْتُونَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. They come on the day of judgment. Right? This is the day of judgment. Right? Everything's been done. They come on the day of judgment. بِحَسَنَاتٍ. A lot of deeds. Like a mountain of Tihama, one of the mountains. بَيْضَاء. A lot of deeds. فَيَجْعَلُهَا اللَّهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا. Meaning it's good deeds. The size of the mountains. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it like dust that's gone in the wind. And so Thawban, who's the narrator of the hadith, he said, O Messenger of Allah, describe them to us and tell us more so that we will not become one of them unknowingly. Right? So we make sure we're not from them. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said something very strange. He said, أَمَا إِنَّهُمْ إِخْوَانُكُمْ أَمَا إِنَّهُمْ إِخْوَانُكُمْ وَمِنْ جِلْدَتِكُمْ وَيَأْخُذُونَ مِنَ اللَّيْلِ كَمَا تَأْخُذُونَ وَيَأْخُذُونَ مِنَ اللَّيْلِ كَمَا تَأْخُذُونَ وَلَكِنَّهُمْ قوم إذا خلوا بمحارم الله انتهكوها إذا خلوا بمحارم الله انتهكوها. What does that mean? He said that they are your brothers. They're your brothers and they're from your race. They're just like you. And they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and some of them even pray the night. Some of them even pray the night. Right? However, وَلَكِنَّهُمْ قَوْمٌ. They are a type of people that when they're alone, they transgress the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So in front of people, they're all nice and righteous and religious, but when they're by themselves, the curtains are closed, the doors are closed, they're animals, they're different people. They forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? They don't have taqwa in their heart. Their heart doesn't have taqwa. Right? And so their hearts are sick. And maybe even their hearts are dead. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make all their deeds haba'an manthura, gone. Right? All their deeds gone. And so this again shows us the importance of studying this matter. Right? That a sick heart, whatever a person might think they did, if you did it and your heart was sick, you got a big problem. Right? Now, when we talk about the heart, what do we mean? What do we mean by heart? Of course, we're not talking about the physical heart in our body, the one that pumps blood, right? We're talking about a spiritual heart, right? We're talking about the spiritual heart. And if you look in like in the literature, you know, there's a lot of debate about where do decisions come from. You know, do your decisions come from your head, or do your decisions come from your heart, or your, you know? And so there's a lot of discussion in that. But recently, like there's been a lot of studies, even medically, that have said that, you know, there is communication between the heart and the brain. There's communication. I mean, you can look this up. I'm not making this up. There's communication. There's evidence of communication between the heart and the brain, and that the heart communicates with the brain, and the brain actually sends signals back to the heart, which is a very interesting phenomenon, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hajj, أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. This is an amazing ayah, because, and you know, some of the Orientalists might say, you know, that, you know, this shows that the Quran doesn't make sense, because here the ayah says, you know, will they not travel in the earth, you know, and they will have hearts that can reason. فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا, hearts that will reason. And so some said that, okay, this doesn't make sense because the reason doesn't come from the heart. But even now, there's some studies, medical studies, like I said, that show that actual thinking or reason comes from the heart, which is very amazing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, you know, قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is talking about, why don't they travel? Why don't they look around and see the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because one of the things that we need to know, that when a person, the ayat, and here I'm using the word ayat in the Quran, when the person, those ayat of the Quran are in their heart, then the ayat outside, like the mountains, you know, like the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be able to reflect about them, reflect on them. Right? When the ayat of Allah from the Quran, the actual words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are internalized in the person's heart, he can go around and look, and he will see them differently. He will not see the mountain as a rock. He will see this as the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will see that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to turn into dust on the Day of Judgment. It will be flattened. You know, he will think of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will look at the birds, you know, and remember the verses about the birds, who provides for them, all these things. This is the heart that is filled with the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he can reflect about the actual physical ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't they have hearts that can reason and see these ayat? And then he says, it's not actually the eyes that are blinded, because people will see these signs and they'll be like, oh, there's no creator, it just came out of nothing, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, no, actually it's the heart that is blinded. The heart is blinded, right? The heart is blinded, and it tells the brain, no big deal, it's just a mountain, it's just your eyes seeing something, it's just, okay, it's just rocks, right, the size of this, volume this, you know, these technical information, but they will not see the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will not see the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The interesting quote I found about Einstein, the famous scientist, he said, he was talking about like the intuitive mind, right? He calls it all the metamorphic mind. He said this intuitive or metamorphic mind is a sacred gift, like a sacred gift. And he said that the rational mind was a faithful servant to it. Right? The rational mind is a faithful servant, and some have said that he meant by intuitive or metamorphic mind, meaning the heart, where the thinking comes from. And he said that the mind is a servant to it. Right? The mind is a servant to it. Ibn al-Qayyim said something actually very, very close to it. Ibn al-Qayyim, the famous scholar, he says something very close to it, and he says that al-aql, the mind, the intellect, okay, the origin of it is the heart. The intellect, the origin of it is the heart, and its fruition, and like he said, وَزَرْعُهَا وَثَمَرُهَا فِي الرَّأْسِ. Right? So the The thinking, the intellect is in the heart. The origin is in the heart. Everything that happens after it, it's sent to the mind, to the ras, right, where the mind is, and then it tells the body to do whatever. It tells the body to do whatever. And I'll give you some examples that will kind of make this make more sense. Sometimes you meet someone and you love them, or you care about them, or you like them, and love is in the heart, right? Love is in the heart. Love comes from the heart. So you will look at that person and you will not see any faults. You will not see any faults. That person might have a lot of problems, right? But you don't see them. The heart tells the brain, listen, this guy is perfect. He's a good guy. You don't see them until maybe somebody points them out for you. There's some people that you're really close to, you don't see their faults, right? And this happens even like, especially with people that are like newlywed, they meet someone and then the hormone levels are really high, right? And they're just like, they might not pray or whatever, but they're like, no, these guys are perfect. This person is perfect, right? Those who are married, they know what I'm talking about. But you excuse the faults, no problem. And the opposite, sometimes if you hate someone, or there's hate in the heart for someone, you will see no good. Like you'll only see faults, and he might have a lot of goodness in him, right? But you only see the faults. You only see the faults, right? And that's because the heart tells it tells you, okay, there's nothing wrong with this person, or there's a lot wrong with this person, right? When a different person will see different. A different person will be different. Does it mean that you can't see it? No, it's just that khalas, now the heart heart is the king, as we will see. The heart is the king. A famous poet, he said, وَعَيْنُ الرِّضَى عَنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ كَلِيلَةٍ. The ayn of rida, the satisfied heart, eye, okay, when it sees something, okay, when it sees something that it likes, okay, it doesn't see any faults, right? وَلَكِنْ عَيْنُ السُّخْطِ تَبْدِي الْمَسَاوِيَ, right? But the eye that's like hating, it sees a lot of faults, right? And we all know we've experienced this, right? We've experienced this many times. And so, as we can see, the heart is the king. The heart is the king. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in an authentic hadith, that it's a long hadith. At the end of it, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أَلَا وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً. And this is famous hadith that many people know. أَلَا إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً. In the jasad, in the body, there's a mudgha. إِذَا صَلُحَتْ صَلُحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, verily there's a piece of flesh in the body. There's a piece of flesh in the body. If it is healthy, the whole body is healthy. If it is healthy, the whole body is healthy. And if it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. If it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Verily, it is the heart. Now, someone might say, is this talking about the physical heart or the spiritual heart? If you look at it both ways, it makes sense, right? Even if you look at it as the physical heart, if you get a heart attack, yani khalas, you're gonna die, right? All the blood comes from the heart. If the heart is not healthy, you're done, right? And even in a spiritual sense, which is what most ulama talk about, is your spiritual heart. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said something very, very profound. He says, Al-qalbu malik. The heart is a king, okay? Wal-a'da'u junudu. And the limbs, your hands, your eyes, your feet, are the soldiers of the heart. فَإِذَا طَابَ الْمَلِكُ طَابَتْ جُنُودُهُ. If the king is healthy and sound, then the limbs are healthy and sound. وَإِذَا خَبُثَ الْقَلْبُ خَبُثَتْ جُنُودُهُ. And if the heart is corrupt, then the limbs are corrupt. And this makes perfect sense. If the heart is sick, then the heart is the one that commands everything. And that's why it's so important that we take care of our hearts. That's why it's so important that we make sure it doesn't become a sick heart. It doesn't become a dead heart. And whenever it's sick, we heal it and we cure it. Because it's going to affect how we behave. It's going to affect what you do, right? It's going to affect what you do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at just our actions, our body, our looks. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks is the heart. The place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks is the heart. What's the proof? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنظُرُ إِلَىٰ أَجْسَادِكُمْ وَلَا إِلَىٰ صُوَرِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at your bodies, and He does not look at your looks. وَلَكِنْ يَنظُرُ إِلَىٰ قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. وَلَكِنْ يَنظُرُ إِلَىٰ قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. And in the same hadith, and I'm giving you the end of it because it's a long hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, he mentioned a lot of things that you shouldn't do, right? Like he says, beware of suspicion, for suspicion is the worst. He said, this suspicion, أكذب الحديث, the worst of lies and tales. He said, do not look for others' faults. Do not spy on one another. Right? Do not be jealous of one another. Do not have enmity against one another. Do not sever your ties with one another. Right? He's mentioning all these things. Then he's like, at-taqwa ha-huna. This is the famous hadith. At-taqwa ha-huna. He pointed that taqwa is here. Right? Taqwa is here. If taqwa is here, then that's what telling you that Allah is watching you. Right? It's not here. The taqwa is here. The Prophet ﷺ pointed right here. At-taqwa ha-huna. Another evidence that shows that this is where the intellect comes from. And then it goes until the end of the hadith. Verily, Allah does not look at your bodies nor your faces, but He looks at your hearts and your deeds. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at our hearts and our deeds. And so those three people that will be judged on the Day of Judgment, the martyr, the scholar, the mutasaddiq, the philanthropist that was giving a lot of sadaqat, right? They did not realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not just look at their deeds. He looks at their heart first, then He looks at the deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at our hearts first, then looks at our deeds. So the smart person would make sure that his heart is sound, and he will do everything he can to make sure that the king of his body is safe and is healthy and is strong, right, and is not sick. And any time that he gets sick, he makes sure that he heals it, right? That's what a smart person would do. One time the Sahaba were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and one of them he said أَيُّ النَّاسِ أَفْضَلُ. Who are like the best people? So the Prophet ﷺ says, كُلُّ مَخْمُومِ الْقَلْبِ صَدُوقُ اللِّسَانِ. كُلُّ مَخْمُومِ الْقَلْبِ صَدُوقُ اللِّسَانِ. قالوا, so they said to him, to the Prophet ﷺ, صَدُوقُ اللِّسَانِ نَعْرِفُهُ. We know what صَدُوقُ اللِّسَانِ means. فَمَا مَخْمُومُ الْقَلْبِ. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, said, who is the best of people? He said, everyone who is pure of heart and sincere in speech. Makhmum al-qalb means pure of heart, clean heart. I think some people still use this in the Arabic language, makhmum meaning like clean, right? Makhmum al-qalb wa saduq al-lisan. So they said, okay, we know what sincere in speech, saduq al-lisan means. Okay, we know what sincere in speech meaning like an honest, truthful person. But what is makhmum al-qalb? They asked the Prophet ﷺ. He said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, huwa al-qalb al-taqi al-naqi la ithma fih wala baghi wala ghil wala hasad. Yeah, huwa al-qalb al-taqi al-naqi la ithma fihi wala baghi wala ghil wala hasad. That heart, that clean heart, it is the heart that is pious and pure, has taqwa, right? And it has no sin, meaning even if he sins, he's always making tawbah. He's always making istighfar, always going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It gets dirty, he goes to clean it, right? It has no sin, no injustice. It doesn't oppress people. It doesn't oppress people. It doesn't treat people with injustice. And it doesn't have rancor, ghil. It doesn't have enmity with people, or bitterness towards people, or resentment towards people, right? And it doesn't have hasad, envy, which is one of the biggest diseases of the heart that we'll talk about inshallah. It doesn't have envy, right? And some of the scholars, they said envy right? What's envy? Sometimes we think like it's translated into jealousy, right? Al-hasad. Some of the ulama, they said envy is just you not wanting someone else to have something. Like if someone has a nice car, you're like, I wish you didn't have it. Right? That's hasad right there, which is a very dangerous sin. And you see that Iblis, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels to prostrate and him to prostrate to Adam, what happened? He got jealous. He got jealous. Well, I'm created from fire and he's created from teen, from mud. You know, I'm better than him. So he became jealous. He became jealous. Basically, why don't they prostrate to me? I'm better. So we see that hasad actually was one of like the first diseases of the heart, the first sins. If you look at in the Quran, you will see that one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to purify the hearts and the souls. And we'll see in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he's building the Kaaba with his son Ismail, they made a few du'as. You know, they said, رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And then they said, رَبَّنَا وَابْعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. So Ibrahim is building the Kaaba with Ismail. And this teaches us that, you know, one of the best times to make dua is when you're doing good deeds. And what's better than building the Kaaba, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're building the Kaaba and they're making these du'as. And subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ was a result of the dua of Ibrahim, which is amazing, right? And so they're making this dua. They said, oh Allah, send to these people, you know, a messenger from you, that he will tell them or give them your ayat. Yeah? يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. He will teach them the kitab and al-hikmah. Kitab and hikmah usually have something to do with the law. You know, teaching them the law. Kitab al-hikmah, some ulama said the Quran and the Sunnah. Right? But kitab usually in the Quran, when they say kitab, is like the law. Right? وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to dua in 3 places in the Quran. One of them is Surah Al-Jum'ah, and he says, هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to the dua of Ibrahim and Ismail, but changes it a little bit. If you notice in the first one, he said, يتلو عليهم آياتك ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة ويزكيهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to the dua, he says, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. So now tazkiyah came first. Tazkiyah came first, before al-kitab wal-hikmah, before teaching the kitab wal-hikmah. And some of the ulama, they said, because that's the proper way to discipline people or to teach people, right? You purify them first, purify the hearts, purify the souls, and then you start giving them the rules. You start telling them, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, right? And we see this sunnah in the seerah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Meccan surahs, in the first 13 years, we see that the ahkam were not coming down. Yani the ahkam of salah and khamr, you know, the tahrim of khamr and all these things did not come in Mecca. Rather in Mecca, the surahs, they talked about tawheed, you know, purifying the heart, you know, treating people properly, your neighbors, your parents, things like that. You know, the akhirah, yawm al-akhirah, you know, the day of judgment, right? Talking about these things that will kind of soften the heart, purify the heart, right? From all the shirk and all the things that people were doing. And then in Medina, you see some of the rules, some of the ahkam coming down. The long surahs like Baqarah, you know, and Surah An-Nisa and things like that, coming down with the ahkam and the rules. Don't do this, do this. And we see this is a great wisdom, because even like, you know, giving da'wah to people, or even raising our children, right? Many of the times we see, you know, we tell people don't do this or do this, right? Without explanation, right? And maybe they'll do it out of fear, but when they, you know, they reach the age of 18 or whatever, or, you know, whatever it is, they'll just leave it. And we see this happen a lot. We see this happen a lot, especially with like youth and things like that. The parents they don't focus on tazkiyah of the kid. They don't teach them who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, how to build a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the day of judgment, all these things which are supposed to be motivations for a person to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what ends up happening is people, like, they just do things out of like culture and routine, and just because my dad said so. And so the heart is not purified, right? The heart is not purified, and we get a lot of these like kind of a lot of hypocrisy, right? And a lot of fake people, right? People that kind of look good on the outside, or people who even leave the religion because khalas, they just been doing this because they had to, right? It didn't come from here, right? So this is kind of the priority. In Surah Al-Muddathir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. In some translations you will see that وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ means thiyab, يعني like a cloth. Your cloth, purify your cloth. But actually some of the ulama, Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, you know, in this ayah, وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, that the jumhur of the mufassirin, they actually agreed that thiyab here means your heart. وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, meaning purify your heart. Once you recognize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then purify your heart. And this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Shu'ara, we find a really interesting passage. And this comes after the discussion between Ibrahim alayhi salam. We always go back to Ibrahim, subhanAllah. Ibrahim alayhi salam, between him and his father and the idol worshippers, right? And as you know, the father of Ibrahim, you know, he was like the manufacturer of idols. You know, he wasn't just an idol worshipper. He was like, you know, the manufacturer, like the one running the whole thing, right? And so there was a discussion between them and Ibrahim. And Ibrahim's like, why, you know, do they benefit you? Do they heal you when you're sick? Do they even help you? All these things. And then he makes some interesting dua and an interesting statement, which is very powerful. He says, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. He says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. This is Ibrahim alayhi salam, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, إِذْ جَاءَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. You know, he came to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. You know, a pure, clean heart, right? He says, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. Ibrahim alayhi salam is saying, oh Allah, do not humiliate me يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ, on the day of judgment, the day when people are resurrected in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the day when people have to stand and basically testify for everything they have done, the day when the body will testify, the tongue will testify, the limbs will testify. In other verses, يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ وَبَرَزُوا لِلَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَارِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on that day which the earth will be different from this earth, and even the heavens will be different. وَبَرَزُوا لِلَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَارِ. And everybody will have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another verse, Allah says, يَوْمَ يُنفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَفَزِعَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ. When the trumpet is blown for the day of judgment, فَفَزِعَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ. فَزِعَ, like the people are just panicking, running around. That day, Ibrahim alayhi salam is saying, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يُبْعَثُونَ. Do not humiliate me, O Allah, on that day. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. That day where wealth and children will not benefit the person. Your millions of dollars, your children, whatever they have achieved, they will not benefit you. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا, except مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Right? Ibrahim is saying a very, very profound statement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quoting him in Surah Al-Shu'ara, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. That on that day, nothing will benefit you. Yani, nothing can benefit you unless you have a sound heart. Nothing will benefit you on the day of judgment unless you have a sound heart. And so we see that even يعني يوم القيامة, right? Whether you go to Jannah or Jahannam, heaven or hell, depends on this heart. And the only ones who will enter is qalb salim. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, وَلَا تَقُفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and do not pursue that which you have no knowledge of. Right? Qatada the Mufassir, rahimahullah, he said, here it means, do not say that which you don't know. وَلَا تَقُفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ. Meaning, don't talk about that which you don't know. Don't say that you saw something you didn't see. Right? And we see that a lot with people, right? Like, they just talk without thinking. They just speak without thinking. They just say whatever. Right? They don't even think about if this is true or not true. Right? They just talk, or they just say things. Alright? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet وَلَا تَقُفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. Don't just, say things without thinking. إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. That the hearing and the sight and the fu'ad, the heart, all of them will be questioned on the Day of Judgment. All of them, everything. Right? Everything you heard or you saw or you said will be questioned. And interestingly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word fu'ad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word fu'ad. And the Quran, a heart is mentioned as fu'ad or qalb. Fu'ad or qalb. And if you look at the word fu'ad, like linguistically, it comes from the word meaning burning, like something burning on a flame. Right? Like if you can think of like a piece of meat or something being cooked or being burnt on a flame. Right? And the heart will be called fu'ad in the Quran, or even in other, in the Arabic language, if it's kind of flaming with emotion. Like it's really excited heart. Whether it's good or bad, because the heart can be excited with negative, excitement, like anger and jealousy and all these things. Or it could be with something good, something that motivates you to do good. Right? Like the ayah, لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we sent the Quran, لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. Here, referring to the heart as fu'ad, so that it can actually do action. This Quran was sent down to your heart, so it can actually motivate you to do action, and give you that energy, right? And even we see in the story of the mother of Musa, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told her to put her baby, right? Because that year, it was the turn, right, for the kids to be killed. And Musa was destined, he was supposed to be killed by the soldiers of Fir'aun. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala awha to the mother of Musa, he revealed to her to imagine like you just had a kid, the mother just carried this for 9 months, just had the baby, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told her, throw him in the river, like put him in the river, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, had we not, لولا أربتنا على قلبها, had we not, made her heart firm. First he said, وَأَصْبَحَ فُؤَادُ أُمِّ مُوسَى فَارِغًا. The fu'ad of the mother of Musa, it like woke up almost like empty. Why? Because she woke up and she had to do this thing. Like her heart was gonna like leave her body almost. Because she had to do this thing. Imagine like the emotion that a mother has when she's putting her baby in a river, right? Just take. It has nothing, just 100% tawakkul. Allah said, had we not, لولا ربطنا على قلبها. Now he's talking about qalb, because now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it firm. He's talking about the heart. Then لِتَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, so that she can be firm, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you'll be asked about that. And even like subhanAllah, sometimes if we don't have control of our heart, our emotions, a person will be angry and he will do something silly. How many silly things people have done? How many stupid things people have done out of anger, right? Or hasad, or jealousy. Blinded. They're just blinded. They don't even realize what they're doing. And then after they're like, and then they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. That wasn't myself, right? And that's because the heart is so, it's just out of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us about those too, right? People will do things out of anger and out of jealousy and all these things, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them about them, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them about them. So they are responsible for that. You cannot blame shaitan, you cannot blame your anger, you cannot blame whatever other emotion or disease in your heart. So now, let's go to the types of hearts. So what are the types of hearts? Now that we've kind of introduced the topic, we know the seriousness of this topic, the danger of a sick heart, and that the only thing that will save us on the Day of Judgment is a sound heart. What are the types of hearts? There's a difference of opinion about the types of hearts and how many of them are. If you look in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He starts Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So He starts talking about the first type of heart, the first type of people, Al-Muttaqeen, the believing people. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. You know, 5 ayat I believe. And then what's the second type of heart? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the second heart He talks about is the heart of a disbeliever. And then the really long part, yeah, the hypocrites. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. Those people who say we believe in Allah and the Day of Judgment, but they're not actually believers, they're hypocrites. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about these three kinds of hearts. Some of the ulama, and actually there's a hadith to kind of back it up, they talk about those three hearts, but they include another heart that is in between the believer and the hypocrite. The believer and the hypocrite. And it makes a lot of sense once I explain it. Abu Sa'id reported that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the hearts are four kinds. The hearts are four kinds. The first one is the heart of the believer, the polished heart. Like a heart that is shiny, nur coming out of it, meaning iman coming out of it. This is the heart that is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that when something like a fitna or something comes to it, it can repel it. So this is the sound heart. And then there's a sealed heart with a knot tied around it. And this is the heart of the disbeliever. Right? This is the heart of the disbeliever. ختم الله على قلوبهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Whether you tell them, you warn them, or you don't warn them, they will not believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sealed their heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sealed their heart because of them rejecting the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not because of injustice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do any injustice against anybody subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because of their rejecting the ayat over and over and over and over, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sealed their heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sealed their heart. Right? And then the other heart, the third heart, is the heart of the hypocrite. And the heart of the hypocrite is the one that is turned upside down. It's pure of hypocrisy. It saw the truth and then it rejected it. It saw the truth and then rejected it. So they know that they saw the truth and then they did kufr. They left. Right? And then they said, oh, we're believers, but they're actually inside this kufr. Right? And this takes the person out of Islam. This is the hypocrisy of the heart. We're not talking about like hypocrisy in amal. Like someone might be hypocritical in some of the things he does, but that doesn't necessarily make him a hypocrite in the heart. So there's a difference here. The nifaq al-akbar wal-asghar, right? And then the fourth heart is the heart that has two things. Right? Maddatan. Right? Maddatu imanin wa maddatu nifaqin. Right? It has iman in it and it has hypocrisy in it. Right? And this heart is the one that kind of struggles between both. Right? It might, when it's in a, sitting down, reading the Quran, maybe listening to a lecture, the heart kind of listens and it's affected. But then when it leaves, it might do something wrong. It might go do something haram. And then it's kind of like a cycle. And whichever one it leans towards, if it leans towards a lot of bad deeds and sins and it doesn't repent, then it might become a dead heart or a very sick heart, and the heart will be sealed. If the person repents and keeps doing a lot of good deeds and does his best to kind of stay away, if that wins over, that heart will become like the shiny, radiant heart of the believer, right? Like the radiant, shiny heart of the believer. So those are the four kinds of hearts. Like there's the heart of the believer, the heart of the disbeliever, the one that is sealed, the heart of the hypocrite, right? And the heart that has hypocrisy and iman. So the one, and probably most people go there, right? They're having that struggle between nifaq and iman, right? They'll have iman, you know, they'll feel, sometimes they'll get affected by the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but then like there's that nifaq, where the hypocrisy, where they go do something bad, you know, and they forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and things like that. Now, I want to finish with this hadith that talks about how does the heart get sick. So now we want to know, how does the heart get sick? Specifically, how does the heart get sick? There's a long hadith where it was narrated by by Hudayfa radiallahu anhu. He said that تعرض الفتن على القلوب تعرض الفتن على القلوب كالحصير أو كعرض الحصير عودا عودا تعرض الفتن على القلوب كعرض الحصير عودا عودا. Right? He said that fitan, tribulations, they are presented to the heart كعرض الحصير. What's hasir? Basically, it's, you know, those reed mats, maybe something like that behind you, but it's kind of like those mats that are like made of those like sticks, you know, they bring them one by one, udan uda, right? And then they put a string around it to tie it, right? So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, تعرض الفتن على القلوب كعرض الحصير عودا عودا, right? One by one, stick by stick. فأي قلب أشربها نكتت فيه نكتة سوداء. Any heart that absorbs it, this fitna, right? And so, you know, everyday life, you go and you see something like a fitna, something haram, right? Or something is presented in front of you, or something you hear, right? And subhanAllah, like, you know, so many things that people have, you know, doubt about, you know, music and all these things, you know, is it haram, is it not haram? You just have to listen to this hadith, because it's saying that تُعْرَضُ الْفِتَن. So a person might hear something, right? And if the heart accepts it, yeah, نُكِتَتْ فِيهِ نُكْتَةٌ سَوْدَاء. A black dot is stained on the heart. There's a black dot on the heart. وَأَيُّ قَلْبٍ أَنْكَرَهَا نُكِتَتْ فِيهِ نُكْتَةٌ بَيْضَاء. Any heart that rejects it, this fitna that is presented to them, because this life is full of fitan, and you can't just hide in your basement and just, you know, avoid all this. This is part of the test. The fitna is coming or presented in front of someone. If he rejects it, then a white dot will be placed on his heart. Yeah, نكتت فيه نكتة بيضاء حتى, until تصير على قلبين, until there's like two hearts. So one or the other. One of them أبيض مثل الصفا فلا تضره فتنة ما دامت السماوات والأرض. A heart is white and pure. No fitna can affect it. Fitna will come and it will be able to reject it. And it will stay white and clean like that ما دامت السماوات والأرض, until the end of time, basically. This is like the heart that fought off the fitan. You know, it was presented to them, but they fought it off. It was presented to them, but they fought it off. This is the white, clean heart. So that's the first one. And the second one, وَالْآخَرُ أَسْوَدُ مُرْبَادَ كَالْكُوزِ مُجَخِّيَ لا يعرف معروفا ولا ينكر منكرا إلا ما أشرب من هواه إلا ما أشرب من هواه. So what does this mean? So now the second one, okay, is the one, and the example given here like a vessel, like container, dusty and like upside down, like it's blocked, right? Imagine like it's blocked. It cannot take anything good. It doesn't accept any good. It doesn't recognize any good. It's like a mixture of, it's mixed with like darkness and maybe a little bit of white here and there. But kind of the darkness took over. The fitan, the heart kind of kept absorbing them. Fitna came, absorbed it, no tawbah. Fitna came, absorbed it, no tawbah. Fitna came, absorbed it, no tawbah. And so the heart just becomes dark and black dots, black dot, black dot, black dot. كَعَرْضِ الْحَصِيرِ عُودًا عُودًا. Right? And so if you see the hasir, when you make those mats, if it comes oud, stick, and then like there's no nur that can come out. It's blocked, right? It's blocked, and then you tie it and it's tight, right? Every time a person might make tawbah, he'll take that off. Take one stick off, and then another fitna comes, he accepts it, and then he takes it off. And so if a person keeps accepting fitan, right? The heart keeps accepting fitan, right? It will become like that thing, like a vessel closed, kind of, dusty. It doesn't take any good, and it doesn't reject any evil. It doesn't reject any evil. And it just does whatever it desires. That heart just does whatever it desires. Yani if I wanna do zina, I do zina. If I wanna steal, I steal. If I wanna lie, I lie. Like it doesn't have any repercussions, right? And that is the heart that kind of accepts these fitan. So that's how a heart gets sick, right? And this is important to know because we face these fitan every day, right? And someone might say in the West more, but you know what? Everywhere you face this fitan. Even if you're in front of the Kaaba, maybe it's a bit less, but you still face fitan, right? Wherever you are now. Khalas, now it's a globalized, society. It's a globalized world now, right? Fitan are everywhere, but is what you do with them, right? Do you protect yourself? And someone might, a person should not expose himself to fitan. He should do his best to avoid them. But if he's presented with a fitna or a trial and tribulation, he should reject it, right? And what does it mean, like ushribaha? Like what does it mean that he absorbed the fitna? It means that he enjoyed it, right? Like a person will do something wrong and they'll enjoy it, and that's the most dangerous thing. That when a person does something wrong and they enjoy it, right? The heart that still has some iman will actually have nadam, regret, and they will go and make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah next week we'll talk about the signs. What is a qalbin salim? Inshallah next week we'll talk about what is a sound heart. We'll talk about inshallah what are some of the signs of a sick heart. What are some of the signs of a sick heart? We'll talk about that inshallah. And inshallah in the next weeks we'll pick some specific diseases of the heart, and we'll go deep into them, and we'll talk about how do people get these diseases and what are some of the cures for them, inshallah. And I want to finish with type of like a question, and some of the ulama have mentioned this in their books. They said, what is the root of all diseases? Like the disease of the heart, like what's the root? Why do people get all these diseases like envy and hate and love of this, all these things? What's the root? Is there like a root? And there's difference of opinions, but it's interesting to look at them. One of the ulama said that it's the love of this temporary world, hubb ad-dunya, and this is mentioned many times in the Quran, right? That the people like just love this dunya, right? When the soul, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the soul that is longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when that soul has entered the body, when the soul enters the body, and the body, as we know, is made out of this dunya, the dirt, right? Now that nafs becomes kind of, kind of confused. I want to please the body, I want to do everything on this dunya, and then the soul is like, no, you gotta, there's the akhirah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us, and so there's that kind of struggle. And this dunya is a temptation, and the love of this dunya, right, it makes people do some crazy things, right? If you look at like all the issues, from mortgages to like all these things people do, right, they justify it, right, because the short-sighted mind of them, right, it's a short-sighted kind of way of thinking, right, that we're gonna be here forever, or we gotta build a house, or we gotta get a car, or and they're competing with everybody trying to accumulate wealth, and this heart gets put aside, right, and all these diseases coming in, and jealousy, and takathur, just wanting to compete with others. You see it all the time. The neighbor builds a fence, now we have to build a fence. No, but the fence can't be the same, it has to be better. And then the guy gets a car, we have to get a car and it has to be better. My uncle got a house, we can get a house smaller, but we'll get a bigger one just kind of because we got to be better, right? Someone like, their son has graduated, and then they go back to their kids, like, you better graduate too, right? So all these things, love of this dunya, right? Love of this dunya, Another opinion by Ibn Abbas, he said, tama', right? Covetousness or greed, tama', is the root of all diseases. He said, tama', greed. And I think that's a very strong claim, right? And it's related to this dunya, right? It's tama' in this dunya. People want everything, right? And you see this with everybody, right? People always want, like, even kids, like, if you see two kids and you give one kid, like, you know, two candies and one kid one candy, like, the other one's gonna be jealous. He's gonna want more. You know, how come you gave him that one? And the interesting thing about tama' is that it's related to your environment, right? Like, you wouldn't have tama' if nobody was there, like nobody had it. Tama' only comes like when you see somebody else, like, you know, when someone gets a nice job, yeah, okay, then they get a promotion or they get promoted to another bigger job, they're very happy, you know. But then as soon as they hear that their friend got a better promotion, you know, now it's like, you know, tama', they want that, right? They want that, and that can lead to envy. They might wish that person loses that ni'mah and they get that ni'mah, right? So tama' is like, it's a very bad disease. Maybe we'll talk about it, inshallah. And the third opinion, we'll finish on that. They said self-satisfaction. Yeah, when a person is like just kind of full of himself, like they think that, you know, they're very satisfied with themselves. They think that they can do everything. They think that they're self-sufficient, right? And they don't need anybody else, right? And we see a lot of people now, like, they're like that. We don't need Allah, we don't need God, we don't need religion. You know, we're self-sufficient, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Alaq, yeah, kalla, no, yani absolutely not. Inna al-insana la yatgha. Yani most definitely, the human being transgresses, la yatgha, right? Ar-ra'ahu istaghna. You know, he sees himself as self-sufficient. He can do whatever he wants, right? And when do these thoughts come in? When a person is jahil, like ignorant. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the surah with iqra. As we know, the first revelation, iqra, you know, gain some knowledge, right? And the person who doesn't have that knowledge, he starts thinking that he's self-sufficient. He can do whatever he wants. Who needs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? He doesn't know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching him. He's ghafil. All these things come in. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even after he says, Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara. Doesn't he know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see him? Right? This human being who thinks that he's so special, he's so arrogant. And another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, that doesn't the human being, that we created him, min nutfatin, فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. That doesn't the human being know that we created him from nutfa, like from the drop of sperm, you know? If you think about your beginning, you're just a drop of sperm. Why are you so, فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ, then all of a sudden he's just so arrogant and thinking he's so special. You know, just if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that he had a stomach pain or something, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Just like something like, you know, constipation or diarrhea, he'd be in the washroom, he couldn't do anything. Something small like that. The people don't think about that, right? So they say, so the third one was the self-satisfaction. People think they don't need anything, right? And then all these diseases start coming in. You know, they think they can do whatever they want. And inshallah, we'll end with that. Inshallah, next week we'll talk about the signs of a sick heart, and we'll talk about the sound heart. What is the sound heart? What does it mean to have a sound heart? What are the conditions of a sound heart that Ibrahim mentioned in Surah Al-Shu'ara? إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. And we'll talk about some of the cures بإذن and we'll end there inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.